Hello everyone, my name's Amy and on behalf of AWEC, welcome to today's EMI-TA training session. In today's theme, we're going to be discussing teaching reinforcing tools. Let's get started. Now, let's first look at some of the common challenges we'll face as TAs in these EMI classes. A lot of times, our difficulties are threefold, namely language-related challenges, teaching-related challenges, and learning-related challenges. In terms of language-related challenges, a lot of times our students would have difficulty comprehending the class, either through verbal communication or in writing. And because of these difficulties in comprehending, they would have difficulties completing the given task. And so today we'll look a little bit at how are we going to tackle these challenges. Next, teaching-related challenges. As TAs, perhaps English was not your native language. And so we struggled with how to communicate effectively using something that is not our mother tongue. And as a result, we will have difficulty communicating with our student, and perhaps this deficit in our inability to communicate would actually hinder our students' learning. So that's something we need to be mindful of when we are giving out instructions in English. And for our students, as TA, we need to stand in their shoes and think from their perspective. What kind of learning difficulties would occur during the process of EMI classes? And so, perhaps our students, when given a pre-class task, such as a pre-class video or pre-reading, due to the barrier of English or perhaps not understanding the instruction, they'll have difficulty completing said task. At last, because of inability to complete this task in given time, perhaps their self-esteem will be hindered as well. And so in today's lesson, we're going to be looking at how reinforcing tools can help us to overcome these challenges. On the screen, you can now see 3 different color blocks. These 3 different color blocks indicate 3 different countermeasures that can in some way help you as a TA to assist your students in overcoming these common challenges. The first countermeasure that we're going to introduce to you is how to utilize different class management tools. Next, in the student's pre-reading or pre-class task, what are some reading guidance that you as a TA can help? And at last, we're going to be teaching you how to complement your teaching activities or teaching process with self-learning videos so that your students can feel more motivated and make your curriculum more interesting. So for today's content, it is divided into 3 parts. Number 1, we're going to introduce you different class management tools as well how to use them. In part 2, we'll be going over some basic reading guidance. And at last, we're going to go into how to use self-learning videos. So let's get started. Part 1, classroom management. So when we talk about class management rules, how do we know which tools are the most effective and efficient to be used in class? And most importantly, which one are the best? So we interviewed our past award-winning TAs, and they came up with 3 platforms that they have found to be the most useful to be used in an EMI class, namely NTU Core, Slido, or Google Form. Now, different class management tools will have different functions, and a lot of it too. And so, with these 3 different tools, we pick specifically what we found to be the most useful in an EMI class. Obviously, different tools need to be used for different occasions. For NTU Core, we find it to be most useful before and after class to use as an assigning pre-task or use as a submission portal. Then for Slido, we find it best to be used during class as its interactive function allows the student to stimulate a better conversation. Whereas for Google Form, we kept it best for last. A lot of times, the TAs have found that it is the most useful when we want to do a pre-test to see whether or not the students have actually completed their pre-reading, or act as an after-class assessment to see whether or not they have understood the content of today's class. Now with NTU Core, it is a platform specifically to NTU student only. So we're going to use it as a reference, specifically talking about how to upload different materials, its function as a video manager, as well as its function of video commentating. For Slido, we're going to discuss its function of acting as a word cloud for students to interact online and for them to vote to rank different items they have uploaded. With Google Form, we're going to focus on its function as a multiple choice tool. So the first function we're going to talk about with NTU Core is its ability to upload different materials. Now, let's say next week is week 14. It is recommended for the TA to go over with your instructor in advance about what the course content is for next week and what kind of materials that is needed to be uploaded at least a week before, say during week 13, to ensure the students had a chance to preview the materials or complete their pre-reading on time, to ensure that they come to class with a general understanding about the topics to be discussed. Next, NTU Core has a very interesting feature that is called the Video Manager. So in order to enrich your curriculum and make sure that you provided a variety of tasks for them to complete, one of it could be to provide supplementary videos. So with NTU Course, there are 5 different functions. Number 1, you could upload video, perhaps something you've recorded yourself or the instructor have recorded it from your local disk. Then you can also incorporate YouTube videos or YouTube links onto NTU Core for the student to view. Next, NTU Core can act like Google Meet to record as the instructor is lecturing. And hence, as a TA, you're able to assist your instructor once they're done lecturing to upload this particular lecturing video for students to go home and perhaps to rewatch again to see if they've missed any important details, or for overseas students or remote learning students to watch. There's also the import function. The import function serves a very particular purpose. Perhaps you've attended this class before, but under another instructor or from another school year. But you already have a similar topic discussed beforehand. And hence, you as a TA will be able to import that video from other courses. Now, be very aware. You must select the module when you are uploading any kind of video, or else the video will be invalid. With these different materials being uploaded, you want to make sure your students are actually participating in this process of learning. And hence, as a TA, you are able to set the restriction on these videos or these materials for them to comment using their own name or anonymously. Furthermore, there are different level of restriction you can edit it, so it could be that their commenting are only available to the TA or the instructor or even amongst themselves in a smaller group. Make sure you have named these folders correctly using the course code, title, or even the dates. Now, you want to make sure that you, as the TA, have spent so much time and effort in ensuring that your student have learned effectively and efficiently. Then it is up to the student for them to complete their share of work. So you as a TA are able to view the completion rate of these videos once your students have watched it. What is interesting is that if your students being a bit lazy, which they do from time to time, and they're skipping ahead in these videos, you will be able to actually see that and perhaps send them a small reminder to say, hey, stop being lazy, because I have done my work, now it's your turn. Furthermore, students would have the opportunity to co-edit and comment on each other's work within a group or in a sense of the classroom. And this feature is called Symphony. Now, moving on to the next tool, which is called Slido. With Slido, as a TA, you must remember, first you need to register for an account before you can design different activities for your student to do. You need to also remind your student to sign in using an event code. Now, this event code will appear after you've created an event. But a student does not need to register an account in order to use Slido. so don't let it be an excuse for a student to not complete their task. With Slido, make sure you're naming your event correctly, because it could be that many different TAs from many different classes are all using Slido. It is possible for students to confuse different Slido events, and hence make sure you name it correctly, perhaps using the school year, the semester, the course code, or the course name. Set the dates correctly, because possibly there's a deadline for them to meet. And then pass on this event code that you can see on the screen, the 219524, to your students so they can access this particular event. Then, like what we said, what is interesting about Slido is that it is interactive. Students can upload different glossary, different sentences, even paragraphs for their peers to view, to vote, or even to comment. And so in this case, you as a TA need to ensure that you're setting the poll settings correctly to your liking. Now, what you will find to be quite interesting, do you see on the right-hand side, there's a small box that says Enable Profanity Filter. Make sure you turn that on. Sometimes a student would like to get naughty, and they would type in random things that you would not imagine them to appear in the classroom. So make sure you turn them on so that no funny business is happening during the class. What is interesting about word cloud as well is that once a student has provided something, say they uploaded vocabulary, once they've hit submit, they'll be able to receive instant feedback. And this is a way for students to share their opinion, to brainstorm different ideas, and to ensure that they have understood the task and the learning content. Now, with this particular feature of providing instant feedback, as a TA, you will also be able to receive instant statistics about the conversation that is occurring right at this moment on Slido. Isn't that fun? Once a student have uploaded something onto Slido, on the word cloud, other students will be able to vote. On a scale of 1 to 10, they're able to vote perhaps on whether they agree with this statement or they agreed of this argument. On a scale of 1 to 10, the student may be able to vote on the validity or the logic or the likability of a certain statement that the other student have uploaded. Now, on the screen, what we suggested is that Slido can also be used as peer evaluations. But as a TA, you will then need to make sure that your poll description is quite clear for the student to follow when they're submitting their peer evaluations. That will make it a lot more easier when you're calculating grades. Next, let's talk about Google Forms. In order to use a Google form, everyone would need a Google account. That is not optional. So when would be a good opportunity for you to use Google Form? Perhaps you want to do a quick quiz of last week's vocabulary, or you want to do a quick survey about when to make up for class. Now, when you're creating a Google form, make sure you've named the file clearly to organize the different forms you may have for the different classes, or the different forms you may have for the different tasks that you want to assign to your students. In a Google form, there are many different kinds of questions. It could be a multiple choice, it could be a checkbox, it could be a short answer, or even paragraph. So make sure you choose the one that is most appropriate for the type of task, question, or survey you wish to distribute to your students. After you've designed a Google form, make sure you look at the preview of your question to ensure it is error-free. Or, after it's submitted, review it one more time. This is to ensure that the instruction you've given out is accurate, or else when students start to answer these questions and your question isn't what it meant to be, then you'll receive a bunch of answers that you do not wish to see. So be aware of that. Next, you need to decide whether or not you want the student to see the result of these questions. Let's say it's a quiz. Do you want your student to know the result of the quiz immediately? Would it affect their teaching motivation? Would it affect their learning motivation on site? Think about the nature of your questions first and the possible result. then decide whether or not you want them to receive that instant feedback. Once you've completed designing the question, you need to click Send, and it will generate a longer website that will allow the student to gain access to this particular Google form. But what you can also do is that you can see on the screen there is a way to shorten the link so that you can make the link more accessible. With Google Form and how it is most useful to the TA is that you are able to view individual responses as well as the overall response you receive from the entire class. So you will be able to identify students' individual performance and whether or not they followed your instruction to complete the task, as well as a class average to see how they've done. Based on the class statistics you receive, you'll be able to observe the highs and the lows of the overall performances. Now, moving on to part 2, we'll be going over some guidance we can give in terms of helping your students with their pre-reading. Some of the common challenges that students face in an EMI class, like we stated previously, is the language barrier. So a lot of times, perhaps students would have difficulty finishing the pre-reading task. At the same time, perhaps when they are reading it, they will be using or misunderstanding the terminologies because of these language barriers. And so what we would suggest is for the student to create a glossary list. Now, this glossary list is not necessarily done by one person, because imagine the workload for each individual that they have to complete in such a short amount of time. And so we would suggest you to co-edit it, which again helps with creating a better dynamic between your student peers and at the same time create a sense of community. Furthermore, it will give them a chance to work together to teach them about the value of teamwork. So remember, at the end of the day, a TA could provide some tips on how to do certain things, but the students are the one that needs to come up with the end products. Also, what we would suggest to you when you're creating your glossary list is that you need to include the references. So which book did it come from? Which reading did it come from? What page is it? Or even to more specifically, which paragraph does it come from? Now, a lot of times perhaps you'll wonder to yourself, a glossary list, but I'm a native speaker. Why do I need a glossary list? Remember, different EMI classes could be different discipline specific, and hence different jargons or even simple terminologies when used in different settings could mean different things. Let me give you an example. Hypothetically, if you and your colleague, A, is sitting side by side in a class, and you ask them, hey, I'm out of lead. Can you lend me some? If let's say your colleague is a local student, or they simply did not grow up with the concept of using automatic pencil, you would not know that lead is something that to be used in an automatic pencil. Because a lot of times people just type on their iPads now. And hence, the importance of glossary lists is for you to utilize under different scenarios in different settings. Now that we established the importance of glossary lists, let's move on. What are some of the steps that we could recommend you to take? Step 1 would divide the students into smaller groups, possibly 4 or 5. Then you will assign a weekly glossary to specific groups, or different groups can take different terms. These students will create different Google spreadsheets, but under the same folder. And then last, as a TA, you will guide these different groups to unfamiliar terms and build a list where you will be monitoring their performance. So turning to our good friend Google, we're able to use Google spreadsheets to co-edit these glossary spreadsheets. Make sure that you reminded the students, or you as a TA, that the restriction for co-editing is lifted so that everyone in the group can edit together, even at the same time monitoring each other's performances. When you're creating these glossaries, make sure that you have the several different components to it. Number 1, quite simply, what the term is. Be very clear about it. Number 2, what the dictionary definition is. And number 3, under what circumstances what scenario or what setting would you be using this particular term? It is through these different interpretations of the same word that a student will be able to understand that this particular vocabulary has infinite possibilities under different settings and how delicate its meaning has changed. Now, moving on to part 3, integrating self-learning videos. So why do we need to integrate videos into our learning? Don't we have enough with all the reading and the writing and the listening task? A lot of times, these videos is to assist with better previewing or reviewing a concept. A video is generally more interesting than holding a book in your hand, don't you agree? Furthermore, with these different videos, we can see a broader and deeper perspective of a certain topic. At the same time, because the video is relatively more accessible in terms of integrating modern technology into our learning, it would actually motivate the student to wanting to watch the video and learn more. Now, some of the tips in terms of integrating these different videos is that number 1, you need to be aware of the length. If the video is over an hour, sometimes the student will lose the motivation to watch it. It is a little too long, so be aware of that. Next, when you're using different videos, make sure that it comes from a legal and credible source. So, if you're using a YouTube video, perhaps you want to examine who the author is, whether or not their source is from a legal and credible source as well. And at last, you as a TA must remember, all these videos that you're providing to your students are only reinforcement. They cannot replace the actual contents that the instructor is going to give in class. So, where can we find this video? Do we have to create it on our own? No. There are plenty of different educational platforms that are online that have different videos from different fields across different disciplines. Say, if you're looking for a video in a general field, perhaps Coursera is a good idea to go to. If you're looking for disciplinary specific videos, and let's say in the law field, perhaps International Justice from Stanford University is a great platform for you to explore. At last, if you want something free, YouTube, there are many different channels focusing on different fields, and they are a great source for you to look at. And by integrating these different videos, you're able to give your student a more variety to their learning and enrich their curriculum as well. Now, I'm a humanities student, so let me give you an example. If today I want to enrich my own understanding about social or environmental issue, the website I will probably go to is called Gapminder. What's interesting about Gapminder is that when you enter the website, they give you a question first. Based on this question, they will give you several different multiple choice answers. Once you've answered this question, if let's say you answered it wrong, based on this wrong answer, this website would then recommend you relevant videos for you to watch to fill in the gap. They would also recommend you different tools or videos that you could watch. And so when you enter Gapminder, you will see a question similar to the ones on the bottom. So let's look at the question together, shall we? And have a little game. What share of the world's population doesn't have enough food to meet their daily needs? Is it 11%, 23%, or 37%? Now, if your answer was 23 or 37, you were wrong. And so Gapminder will then give you that instant feedback of what the correct answer is, which is the first one, around 11%. Because you have answered wrong, then the website will recommend you some relevant videos for you to watch to fill in the gap. Isn't that fun? So today we went over some tools that can effectively and efficiently help you with teaching and help students with learning. We looked at how different class management tools can assist with previewing the task and reviewing the different tasks, in which, in turn, would help the student to gain a deeper and more holistic comprehension of the course content. Now, in the next lesson, we're going to expand this concept into how to visualize different concepts using diagrams or mind mapping. So stay tuned. Remember, there's also a quiz at the end of this video. Make sure to complete it and move on to the next one. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.